Hello everybody and welcome to another author interview at In-House Publishing, and today joining me is Emu, Dave Farrell. How are you, buddy?
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Now Emu is the author of Old Screw, and he's here today to tell us a little bit about it and what inspired him to write it. So Emu, what is Old Screw all about?
Well, Old Screw is about my journey through the New South Wales prison system. You know, I'm 65 years of age now. At 23 years of age I walked through the gates at Long Bay. And that was the start of my career as a prison officer. And I was exposed to working in a jail system with some of the worst prisoners. But I must say, I worked with some of the best prison officers you could ever find. So it was a new experience for me. I never expected to finish up in jail. Although growing up out the back of Bourke, my mother used to often sing out to us, "Boys, you're going to finish up in jail one day."
Okay, so after being in the prison system for such a long time, what motivated you or inspired you to write this?
I think what it was there's a lot of my mates that are slowly passing away, and they've done a lot of great things. These were prison officers that did the hard yards in the early years, the 70s, the 80s and the 90s. They didn't have all the advantages of modern prisons, like with surveillance cameras, metal detectors, all the mod cons and additional staffing. These were hard men that had to work in a system that was extremely difficult. Prisoners that were violent, a system that wasn't really user-friendly. So I wanted to get it out there, how well these prison officers worked. They weren't qualified in regard to being psychologists or well-educated people, but they were very, very smart men and women. They could read a prisoner's behaviour. They would know if there's going to be a riot or if a bit of crap's going to hit the fan, because they would pick up on the prisoner's behaviour. These were men that were fair, firm and consistent.
There's been many of these situations and these people that you've described in the book, and what's been the general reaction? Like, we know that since you've sent out the word that the book is going to be pre-ordered, we've been swamped for the last 3-4 weeks. It's been absolutely crazy. What's been the general reaction from people knowing that you're writing the book?
I think it's been extremely positive. I have the greatest respect for retired prison officers. They were the men and the women that trained me. When I walked into that jail at 23 years of age, I didn't have a bloody clue what was going on. Straight from the bush, you're standing on a post, and it only took me 10 minutes to realise that I wasn't very popular with the prisoners. They were threatening to cut me throat, rape me and bash the hell out of me. So it wasn't a good environment to think to be in. So talking to those people, seeing those men and women that trained me, that I learned so much of, and there were so many hidden stories that never ever came out. The brave men and women, and I can mention names of people that have found weapons that probably saved officers' lives. Officers that have gone into riots and hostage situations. It's a story that needs to be told, because you will always have people talking on hearsay. I'm talking from my gut feelings and my experience. I'm not going to put any bullshit out there. And the oldies, many of them have rung me and they said, "Go for it, Emu."
That is something that I've noticed with the emails that have come through. Is like, right now you've just shown a huge amount of respect to the guys that trained you. However, you're held in very high regard as well. I mean, I read these emails, every single one that came through, I've read them, and you're highly respected. What would you say to them now, looking back at your 40+ year career, to all those guys that look up to you?
Oh, thanks very much. Thanks very much. I wouldn't have made it. I mean, you know, there's that many names I need to thank, but there's people like Frank Hutchins, Karate, Tony Malcolm, Bob Dyson. Bob Dyson was a principal when I joined the job, and Bob told me very early, he said, "Lad," he said, "when you're dealing with prisoners, be fair, firm and consistent. Because that way they'll respect you. But," he said, "you need to command respect." And these are the men that, they didn't expect me to do anything that they wouldn't do themselves. I'd put my life in their hands any day.
Would you change anything about your time in the prison system?
I think we had the best years.
Yep.
We had the best years. I mean to say, as a young bloke, you think you're immortal. And that's why this book needed to come out, because not all operations went well. Some turned to crap. And we were bloody lucky that we didn't get out with more serious injuries. But the people I've met, not just as prison officers, but the nursing staff, I relate to a very, very close story with an officer that got murdered by the name of John Mewburn. He was a great guy, really a great officer, an absolute tragedy to happen. But in that situation, I witnessed a nurse by the name of Rose Macklin nurse John through the most critical periods of time. She was a great lady, and it was really a tragedy to happen, but she tried her best to save John. Sadly, she couldn't.
What does the future look like for you and for Old Screw? Like, we've already established that the book is a preordained success, mate. Well done on that, and it does look amazing. So what's the future have for you?
Really, when people think that there's a lot in the book, I've only scratched the surface. I'm going to say, to give a good example is, and it's a very humbling experience to walk into a retired officer's dining-in night, and you look around the table and you see people of the ilk of Brian Famister, Ian Flynn, Tony Malcolm, Ron Woodham, Jim Matters. The names just keep rolling out, and the stories are there to be told. But the other important thing with prison officers now, the job has changed so much. We had the best years. As young blokes, we thought we were immortal. On occasions, we found out that we weren't. We've dealt with hard prisoners, dangerous prisoners, but in that, there's been a fabric formed between the old screws. I hear people make comments about, oh, the old screws couldn't do this, couldn't do that. I would put my money on the old screws to handle any riot. They might be on a Zimmer frame and they might be on walking sticks, but I have the greatest confidence in those old screws. I admire the men and women that trained me, that have served all those years.
And I guess publishing Old Screw is a great reflection of that now, to leave your legacy really firmly established in the pages of this book.
Exactly.
All good. Well, if you guys want to get a copy of Old Screw, I'm telling you now, they are selling very, very fast. Emu's been sitting here for about an hour signing copies of the book, ready to go out for the pre-orders. So you want to jump onto his website, that's it behind me. There's the web address at the bottom of the screen. It's also available at the in-house bookstore and of course on Amazon. Emu, this has been an awesome journey, mate. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Yep.
Cheers, guys.